It's Brendon, and I'm in the studio in Portland, and I've been on the road like crazy. And since my last vlog to you all on YouTube, where I talked about my event routines and how I recover from such difficult events, where I'm going 4 or 5 days on stage, I got tons of questions about something I left out, which was, how do you manage your sleep while you're traveling? Like, what are your evening routines? So I'm gonna talk about that in this vlog, but I'm also in the studio to shoot some live casts, so I thought I'd give you a little behind the scenes. This is what it looks like for those who have not seen it before. It's a pretty simple setup. We've got the big boom up here. We've got, oh, that's cool. It's kind of awkward and weird, but you can see me right there. We got the two C100 beasts, which I've shot like, I think 28 online courses on this thing. Anyway, I basically stand here. So if you've ever seen one of my live casts before that I used to shoot in Portland, it was basically standing kind of like right here. And then I would put the flip chart, which is now over there, I would put it right here, and then I would teach. And for those who don't know, I go live and I do teaching and training every month for literally hours and hours. I think I do like 2, 3, 4, 5 hours once a month on a Friday. So this is kind of the setup, and that's why I'm in town to shoot something for the peeps, which is awesome. But I thought I'd take this question on. Let me see, I got my notes over here somewhere for you guys. So how do I manage my sleep when I'm on the road? I'm always asked about that, and I thought I would sit with you guys and chat about that. I got my notes here. So how do I do it? First, if you have not watched that video of how I manage my energy at our events, I think that would be really instructive to see what my daily routine looks like in terms of performance to be able to do 40 plus hours on stage at events. But the number one question we got was like, okay, how are you managing sleep at your events? But also, how do you just have a better evening routine? So I want to talk, I know not everybody here, you're on stage for 40 hours, in a week. So instead, let me just share what my basic evening routine and philosophy is, and I hope that will serve you. The first thing, gosh, it's so nice to be back in the studio, guys. The first thing that I always think about is your evening routine is completely dictated by the quality of your daily structure. And what I mean by that is, often our evening is completely destroyed because we didn't organize our day. And so now our day is encroaching into our evening and we become exhausted. We don't get enough sleep, or we carry our stress into bed, which ruins our sleep. So I think one of the most important things you have to learn to do is better structure your day. That's my first tip for you. Structure and organize your day so you are so clear about what you are doing, when you are doing it, how long you are doing it for, and most importantly, what are your major outputs and major intentions for the day. So this is why many of you guys know I use what I got. I got the high performance planner somewhere around here. You should get one. I got the high performance planner. I use this every single morning, and it just keeps my intentions clear. It keeps my tasks clear. It keeps my mind on my own performance so that I can't, make a lot of excuses. It just gets me in a good morning mindset, sets the day up right, and makes me win week over week, month over month. And I hope you'll get one. This time of year, it's awesome. We also, I think, outside of just structuring your day well, is having that intention in your mind to enjoy the day. So yeah, structure and organize the day, but enjoy it. Find moments of peace and gratitude or love or creativity or passion. Because if you enjoy the day, if you love the day, if you have positive energy during the day, it's so much easier to go rest easily at night because you feel fulfilled, you feel grateful, you feel in a positive mindset. So I would say, my first big idea about evening routines, structure the day and fill it with enrichment and joy and gratitude, and you'll sleep better. Then my real evening routine begins, which is what I call my 3-2-1 pattern. And what this means is 3 hours before bed. And yes, I set a time every night that is when I'm going to bed. So if I say, okay, it's going to be midnight, or it's going to be 11, or it's going to be 10, whatever, I always know what time I'm going to bed. And I work backwards from that. So the 3-2-1. 3 hours before bed, I never eat any food. That's really critical. Honestly, for me, it's probably usually 4 to 4.5 hours, but minimum expectations, I will not eat 3 hours before bed. I just think your digestion system needs a little bit of a processing time before you go horizontal, So that's the 3. The 2 is I don't do any work 2 hours before bed. For me, that means no email, no social media, no DMs, no looking at anything on my phone or screen that is work or social media related in the 2-hour block of time before bed. And this really sets me apart because I know most people, they're still scrolling in bed and they're wondering, and they're getting that light from their phone. They're getting that dopamine drop. The more they scroll, the more their brain gets excited, and they don't realize it's ruining their sleep 4 or 5 hours later. That comes back to haunt you. So just put the phone away, or if you have to look at it for your messages or something real fast before, maybe 30 minutes before going to bed. But my rule is 2 hours before bed, no work, no email, no social media, no news, and that is letting my mind wind down. The 1 in 3-2-1 is that the hour before bed, I have no screen time. That includes television. That includes looking at the phone at all, like nothing. So 2 hours before, no work activities. 1 hour before, 0 screen time, ideally. That means Netflix turns off. It means I'm not looking at the phone. It means maybe I'm journaling. It means maybe I'm just chatting with my wife. Maybe I'm just doing the dishes. Maybe I am, making the bed or laying out the clothes for the next day, or, journaling or something like that. But in general, I'm not doing much screen time or work or any other activities in that last hour going into bed. And that's really key. The third big idea I have for you is the room is so critical. Your environment matters. I mean, look at, I'm going to come back to you guys. Look how cool our studio is. Yeah. I spent a lot of my life trying to figure out how to set up ideal environments to allow my creativity and my joy to flow whatever I'm doing, whether it's work or it's, some type of creative endeavor, or it's even sleep. And sleep is important. And so what do I do for sleep? For me, I make sure that the room that I'm sleeping in is set at 65 degrees. And I know you're going to be like, oh my God, that's so cold. And yes, because people sleep better when it's cold. And your body goes, oh, it's nighttime. I should sleep here. This is important. So I set the room very cold, 65 to 68 degrees, depending on where I'm at and how humid it is. Then what I do is I make sure every bit of light is blocked out. I travel with a little electrical tape. My friend Ariana Huffington taught me this. I travel with electrical tape, so when I'm in a hotel, they got all the fire things and the alarms and the little red lights with the TV and, all these little dials around. I shut off everything, and I block every little piece of light so it's completely pitch dark where I sleep, which is totally critical to me being able to sleep well. So the room is now set, okay? Now, before I get into bed, I do about 10 minutes, sometimes 5, but let's call it 5 to 10 minutes of stretching and mobility work, just like stretching out my body. So it's kind of like yoga or calisthenic or, just stretching. And I'll lay on the ground. I'll open up my hips. I'll do runner's lunge. I'll do, happy baby. I'll do all these things to stretch out my body. Then I'll lie on my back, just flat, and allow my vertebrae kind of fall into place. And I'll lay there for maybe 2 or 3 minutes and just focusing on my breath. That's all I'm doing. So I'll stretch, and while I'm stretching, I'm not thinking of anything. I'm just being in the stretch, focusing on my breath. Then I end it with about 2 minutes to 3 minutes of just laying there flat on the ground, letting my vertebrae fall into place, just focusing on my breath. Then I go in and get into bed. Is this totally TMI? I feel like this is super TMI today. But I haven't been, guys, I'm using a new camera here. I've got the Lumix GH5, Panasonic GH5 for those who love this kind of stuff. And I'm experimenting. We spent all day, well, not all day, but probably the last 30, 40 minutes with Ben just playing with the lighting for the live cast tomorrow. And I was like, I'm going to bust out that GH5 because you all have been asking me so much about the sleep stuff. So my last big idea, and this is important before I go to bed, is what I call my peace offering. And that is I'll lay in bed. I'll consider the questions that I consider every night of my life. Did I live? Did I love? Did I matter today? And as I always say, the answer isn't always yes, But if I felt like I lived a little bit today, I tried something, I was spontaneous, I was vibrant, I was happy, I had a positive mood. If I loved today, I led with my heart. I was vulnerable, I was sharing and caring. If I mattered, if I stayed on path to helping you guys, because this is all I do. I'm coming up on my 20th year as a writer. My first book was published in 2001, but I wrote it in 2000. And so, I'm coming up on 20 years as a writer and as a creator. And I've had lots of different jobs and businesses and brands throughout the time, but it's always been for you all. And I just wanted to teach and write. And so if I did some of that during that day, I feel good. So I ask, did I live? Did I love? Did I matter? And just think about them very softly. But then my peace offering. My peace offering is to the day and to God. And it's very simple. It just says, thank you so much for this beautiful day. I hope that I served well. I want to release all of the energy and all of the emotions of this day. I would love to sleep tonight peacefully all through the evening. I want to say thank you for a great day. There's nothing from this day that's going to come into tomorrow. I have done all that I can. The day is over. The emotions are over. The work is complete. There is nothing for me to do until I wake up well rested and excited for the day. The day is over. I appreciate the opportunity to live today, God. Thank you for the opportunity to serve my audience. Thank you for this work I get to do. Thank you for Denise, my wife. Thank you for the health of my family who are still here. Thank you for all of our fans and our friends and people around the world who support us and believe in us and allow us to serve this important mission. Lord, please allow me to rest tonight. And that's about it. It's just like it's just getting into peace. It's talking myself to sleep. It's just like releasing all the energy from the day. And I tell you, I've always been at that moment. There's nothing left in my brain. I'm done. Because listen, think about how all that lined up. I won the day, right? Because I organized it. I followed my high performance planner. I got things done. Then 3, 2, 1 by the time of the night. So I've spent 3 hours winding down, right? 3 hours, no food. That's the 3. 2, I did not do any work in that last 2 hours, ideally. And 1, no screen time in that last hour. Then I made sure the environment was set up for women. It's dark, it's cold. Then what do? I stretch out my body to open it up, to release it, to align my vertebrae, to get comfortable. Then I got into bed. I thought about my life. I gave my gratitude. I released the day. There's nothing else to do. Let's go to bed, babe. That's it. That's kind of how I wind down. I hope that serves you all. Hey, my friends, it's Brendon Burchard. Thanks for joining me this morning for a very important topic as we discuss some difficult topics of life. Those topics of loss, of grief, of dealing with tragedy, difficulty, struggle, loneliness, of how do we carry on when bad things happen? How do we find strength and grace and peace in some of the most difficult situations and moments of our lives? That's a big topic today. I encourage you today to enter and frame this conversation in your own mind, to develop your own mindset and attitude towards these conversations before we even have them, because that is one secret, in fact, to dealing with difficulties of life. To set our minds in advance, to set our intentions in advance, to think through and contemplate, how will I cope with that? How will I face that? How will I endure that? That ultimately is one of the great strengths of consciousness, of presence, of intention, of anticipation that allows us to deal with some of the worst issues of life. So let's enter this as a community, positive, to have a beautiful conversation. Let's do it from a perspective of knowing that we're going to deal with some unpleasant emotions that might come up. And let's face that willingly with trust and faith and gratitude, because I'll share one thing that's beautiful about loss and grief. And that is, you only experience those things and feel those things if you had something and you were connected to something that you enjoyed, something that you felt was important, something that was beautiful, something that was meaningful to you. And so you had a sense of meaningful connection. and something maybe shifted or changed. But that was a beautiful gift. I do want to set the stage a little bit more too, because I probably have a different perspective about this conversation. And many of you have heard about, and I know I got a lot of questions in advance. Are you going to talk about the 5 stages of grief? And no, I'm not. If you've studied Elizabeth Kubler-Ross or the work or the ideals behind the 5 stages of grief, if you haven't heard of that work before, the idea that there's these 5 stages: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. I'm more of the mind of Elizabeth, who came up with that idea and wrote about that so compellingly. Towards the end of her life, she mentioned that she wished that it had never been framed as stages, because as she wrote about and spoke about towards the end of her life as a theorist and a person who had given hospice care, she thought, I wish everyone didn't think there were these stages you're supposed to go through. Some of you feel like you're supposed to feel great by now. You feel like, well, I should have moved through these stages. I should be okay by now. And some of the greatest, moments of grace that you ever allow yourself in life is the grace of time. The grace of allowing, like every single person here, if you look at what we're doing here, these Zoom tiles, every person here will cope with grief differently. Right? Everything I'm going to share with you today is just by nature going to be a generic nature. Everyone will cope differently. And if you're still struggling through and you think, geez, I should be in the stage of acceptance by now, I want to let you know, the person who literally came up with the idea of the 5 stages of grief wished it wasn't called stages, because she thought everyone deals with it differently. It's not sequential. These things become circular in time, and not everybody feels all of these emotions either, right? The people who I've lost in my life, I've never yet had the sense of anger toward. I didn't have a sense of anger that thing happened. I didn't have anger towards my father dying. And I know that might sound completely crazy to people, but that wasn't an emotion that I experienced with death. Partially because of the way that I have faced mortality throughout my life. Not everyone goes through all these stages. So I want to set that frame off the bat. Everybody copes differently. There's no right or wrong way to experience loss. There is, however, a healthy way to re-engage life. We know from 50 years of psychological study, and you all know it inherently and innately, that there's ways that we cope that are healthy, and there's ways that don't make us feel good. There's things that we do that can lead to less ability to continue on with life in a happy way. One of the most important and powerful frames I can give you for loss and grief, above all else and above everything else, is conscious anticipation. Conscious anticipation. Consciousness or awareness in life is so important if we're going to cope well. And what we usually mean when we speak about that, especially with loss and grief, is having the ability to anticipate that it will happen. Okay? That it will happen. That if you haven't faced your own mortality and your own death yet, I deeply invite you to do that at some point. Face your mortality. Your own personal mortality. Most people have never had a conversation about death in their own mind with themselves, let alone contemplating that maybe they would lose a parent one day, or a sibling one day, or a job one day. In other words, in a spiritual practice, we would talk about this as a concept of awareness to impermanence. You've heard that phrase before, awareness to impermanence, that nothing is permanent. That in a lot of spiritual principles, you might think of, well, what is permanent maybe is if it's God, or if it's universe, or it's the Tao or the way, that there might be something spirit that is permanent, but in the human experience, in our natural world, things are impermanent.
Can you face that? Can you face that? Can you anticipate that? Let me switch metaphors for you real quickly. As many of you know, I do this for a living. I talk to groups of people all the time. I'm out on social media all the time, and I talk with so many influencers, so many people who want to be leaders and who are building up their brands and their careers, and they're shocked when someone judges them on the internet. They're amazed when someone posts a negative, just mean comment. They can't believe it. Can you believe this person posted this mean thing on my video I spent months on my life's work? I posted a message that's beautiful about my family, and this person attacked me. Can you believe it? I'm like, yes. Why are you surprised? It's called the internet. Anyone ever been surprised you got a mean attack on the internet? Well, I tell my peers all the time, I'm like, please don't be surprised that that is something that I guarantee that will happen. If you are commuting, if you are driving to work or you are driving somewhere and you are cut off by somebody in traffic and you go into a rage about it, I'm like, you were surprised? And I know these are simple and simplistic and almost silly metaphors here. But I just want to switch your mind into that anticipatory power that we all have. That when we actually anticipate, oh, this is going to happen, we are way more capable of being centered than when we don't anticipate it. I'm not saying there will not be shock. I am not saying there won't be heartache. I am not saying there won't be incredible fear or denial or regret or sadness. But what I'm suggesting to you now is find peace with the inevitable. If we can find peace with the inevitable in advance, we are more able to cope. Switching metaphors again. We have a lot of people in this group here who served in the military before. And as you know, I've been blessed to coach some of the highest level groups in the military across all branches. And the way that they deal with what is about to come, when it is just like one of the most difficult missions or projects or tours of their lifetime, is they rehearse it over and over and over and over again in their mind and in practice and in the field. They get comfortable with what is going to be an uncomfortable, unpleasant, potentially terrorizing situation. I don't pretend that's easy. And that's one reason I love the military, their willingness to do what is incredibly difficult to protect the freedoms that we all enjoy. But I will share, there's some kind of power in that. And I had that. When I was a 19-year-old kid and I had my car accident, it forced me to face death. Any fans here of philosophy? Anyone ever read philosophy? Well, if you've never really gotten into the study of philosophy, I hope you will. And you'll know chapter 1 in all of philosophy, almost across all philosophers in the history of the world, chapter 1, if we could generalize, says you're going to die. Now let's talk about life. That's like the fundamental of philosophy. So I read so much, I got comfortable with the fact that I was going to lose people and there was going to be loss in life. Anticipation. Now, I know this does not sound really motivating, but that's not the point here. The point is to say, can we anticipate it? When I received the call from my dad, letting me know that he had been just diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia out of nowhere. He woke up, was lacking some balance as he walked down the hallway. It was Mother's Day of 2009. So he woke up on Mother's Day, didn't feel good. Mom said, "What's wrong with you?" He said, "I don't feel good." He's kind of unbalanced. The weeks before, he's playing golf and racquetball and bowling. He's healthy. All of a sudden, something's wrong. Doesn't get better. They go to the hospital. Within a few hours, he's sitting with 2 doctors who are looking at his blood work and then do some more tests. And they let him know he has 7 days to live. And they say, you have AML, acute myeloid leukemia. There's two types of leukemia. AML is the one that usually takes the person quickly. And they said, you have 7 days, because what happens is your stem cells, I don't want to go to the whole thing about leukemia, but essentially you're creating blood that's not good, and ultimately it shuts down your organs. I know I could go deeper into that, but those who know what I'm talking about with leukemia, it strikes fast. And so he had 7 days. And as soon as he told me that, I said, okay. And I was in shock. And I wanted to deny it. And I had fear. And that comes from shock. You know, when you hear news that you didn't anticipate, or something happens you didn't anticipate, you're going to have a shock reaction. And for me, I was shocked about it at first, and those emotions come in. And by the end of the conversation, though, as I felt those emotions come up, I also was releasing them, because I'd already contemplated my father's passing years earlier in journaling activities of how I would think of the passing of people. And I know that sounds almost fatalistic, but you know, have you ever heard that saying, you don't want to leave things unsaid? Well, I was reading a book one time and said, you know what, contemplate the passing of people who are important in your life so that you don't leave things unsaid, so that you think of like, wow, what if this is my last moment with this person? If this was my last moment with this person, what would I love to say to them and communicate to them? And don't leave those things unsaid. Now, I know that's difficult, because all of us have had situations where someone has passed or know someone who's passed and things were unsaid. And that is incredibly unsettling. It brings up shock, and it brings up regret, and it brings up sadness, which we'll talk about those emotions. But also in this moment, in the here and now, listen, none of us can take back whatever's happened in our lives, right? Whatever's happened has happened. It is as it was, as it is. We are here now, and all we can do moving forward together as a group is anticipate moving forward. We can't, this is not a thing where I'm going to try to be on a healing journey of the things of the decades past for any of us, because we all heal in our own time, in our own ways. But I'm here to say it's incredibly powerful if we can contemplate mortality and anticipate it and go, wow, what should I say to my kids? What should I say to my loved ones? Let me make sure I take care of people and treat people in ways that I don't regret, and that things are said. One reason I was at peace, because my father had already said everything needed to say to me. I was lucky on that. I'd already said everything I needed to say. Now we just had to go through the process with honor and integrity and respect and love of end of life, and not deny it, face it. My dad faced it with a positive attitude. He knew it was coming. They told him, you have 7 days. He's a Marine, so he made it 59 days. Good job, Dad. And he fought with great attitude. I just couldn't believe it. I kept waiting for his attitude to sour. It never did. Couldn't believe it. He anticipated the end, and he anticipated how he wanted to face it. And it was incredible. And I was lucky to witness that. And I want to let you know, I've also witnessed the complete opposite in care before. Been with families where it was the opposite. And that wasn't right or wrong either. It is, people cope with the end of life is the way that they can. And for those of you who've cared for someone at the end of their lives, I want to let you know that caregiver guilt is something that if you're facing it, or you've ever faced it, that's okay. That's entirely normal. And that you need to grant yourself the peace of knowing you did the best you could at the time with what you knew. You know, I've had the blessing of working with a lot of medical professionals, doctors, and hospice care workers who talk about this. Gosh, I wish I could, we all wish we could take back time and go change things. We can't. And so today, grant yourself the peace and the gift of knowing you did the best that you could at the time that you knew how to do. They did the best they knew that they could. I wish, that was the first time I've ever cared for somebody personally for months on end with leukemia. I wish I knew more about leukemia at the time. I didn't know. So some things I would have done differently, and Dad would have done differently, and my family would have done differently. We did the best we could, and so did Dad. And I want to let you know that no matter what you have dealt with in grief in the past, your family or others' loss, losing a job, your divorce, your breakup, your loss of job, listen, you were as conscious as you were at that moment. You did what you could, and you need to give yourself grace, because please listen to me, my friends. At that time, you were in shock and you were coping. And if you just need a little science from, Brendon right now, let me drop some science on you. A stunning fact that when people are in shock or coping, they don't always perform at their highest level best. Oh my gosh, did the performance guy just tell us that? And say it's okay? Yes. I'm letting you know it's okay that you weren't absolutely phenomenal and perfect, and other people around you weren't absolutely phenomenal and perfect. It's okay if you were getting divorced and the two of you fought. It's okay if you're getting fired and you screamed at your boss. It's okay. Whatever happened, you now must go, I accept it as it was. I'm at peace with what it was. I did the best I knew how at the time. And even if you don't believe you did the best as you could at the time, it doesn't matter, because yesterday's darkness didn't rise with the sun today. You're in a new moment. You're in a new moment. Your cells are new right now. This spirit, this energy, if you take a deep breath in, that air you're breathing, that's fresh. But I want to let you know, we're in the here and now. Take grace and connection with the moment for yourself. We've all had pain. We've all had sadness. We can allow the moment now to refresh us. A moment now to have a new feeling, a new emotion, a new sense about ourselves, a new belief about ourselves, a new faith in ourselves, a new faith in the world right now. This is a new moment, and with new moments, there's second chances. And with new second chances, there's new abilities to begin anew. But even if we don't begin anew, to allow ourselves the peace and the grace of the moment. So important. If you think of like anticipation being something that's really powerful, I also want to share acceptance is really powerful. To accept ourselves as we are now, no matter what has happened to us. To accept life as it is now, even if it's not perfect. To be in a ready state of acceptance is really powerful. To be accepting when your kids act out and they're freaking out and they're angry. To be accepting when your team doesn't get it right. To be accepting when the project falls apart. To be accepting when the video doesn't get the likes you want. Just to be allowing and surrendering to the outcomes of life and face them as they are. Identifying what are the controllable variables here? What's not controllable? And asking for the grace of the wisdom to know the difference between the two. There's a lot of things you can't control. Let them go. The things that you can control, you can only control in this moment. So if you didn't control it right in the past, let it go. It's now uncontrollable. Now, what are the controllable factors? Living in the now will always be the first sort of gate to enter to free yourself from pain. To step back into this moment of now, to accept, to realize this is what is, even if I didn't want it this way, this is what is, and what is here. Okay, now how would I like to interpret it? What would I like to do next? These are the power. You think of if you can anticipate things will happen, and you can accept as is what the world is, while you also accept your power to shift and shape and control and move things around that you can, that's an uncommon perspective to come into things with. To anticipate them and to accept. Those two things are so powerful.
Okay, let's go.
Oh, Growth Day. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Congratulations, you're working on your personal growth and wellness today. I welcome you to today's session on advanced wellness strategies for home and work. What an unbelievable topic, right? The timing is perfect because some of you, like me, you may have spent yourself and your year in a little bit of, in a little bit of a quarantine in a new place, and you're trying to do your job, manage the stress, the obligations that you have with the kids or the family or the business. Try to find that sense of happiness and joy and creativity in life. But it's also a really difficult time sometimes to do all of that when the world is in total chaos and turmoil, when multi-billion-dollar companies are trying to steal your attention and compare you to other people. And so today's topic, I think you're going to find not only timely, but something that will help holistically address so many of the challenges we all face in living a vibrant, a connected, and a meaningful life. If you're new to Growth Day, you might not know that I always kind of talk about this triangle, and this triangle that what we're all really after, after we have some security or a roof over our head or some food in the pantry is, we all want a sense of aliveness. We want that joy, that enthusiasm, that sense, that joie de vivre. We all want connection, and that connection is your relationships and how you feel connected to other people, connected to your family, connected to even yourself. We want meaningful pursuits, the ability to do things that matter to us, that draw our interest or our passion or our obsession or enthusiasm. And right in the middle of that whole triangle, growth, which is what we are here to do today. This topic, man, I'm so happy to see so many of you here right now. This is awesome. I'm just so excited to see you guys here because this topic, a lot of people get wrong. I'm going to start with a simple statement. I'll tell you what we're going to do here today, especially for those who are new. I'm going to start with a very simple statement. I know when I talk about wellness, often people separate wellness in this little category. Oh, that means health, or that's nutrition, or that's meditation. And they kind of feel like, oh, I'll get there. One day I'll be healthy. And I'm always telling people, wellness is not separate from your work day. Wellness is not separate from your life. Wellness is not something you do once in a while or you have once in a while. Wellness is your experience of life. Wellness is your experience of life in this moment. It was your experience of life this morning. It's your experience of life the last week or last 2 weeks. It's not this little thing over there that once in a while you have your kale shake or you have, your keto diet or you get to that gym, once, 3-4 times a week. Those are practices. And I'm going to share with you tons of practices today that I know you will love. But wellness is our experience of life. And when we can look at it that way, things start to really shift in, once in a while I do wellness versus how am I being, feeling, and experiencing life. That's how I think of like my wellness practices, or when I teach wellness to corporations or teach it to you guys in our high performance work. It's always more of a holistic approach because I really believe we want to feel. We want to feel the day. If something is off in your life, it's because you don't feel like you're feeling the day with the emotions and the energy that you want behind it. So today, I've got all my cards to share with you today, some advanced practices that have really served me, but also the mindset of wellness, the experience of wellness. What does that look like? And I know, listen, as soon as you start talking about wellness, people often say, well, is this about losing weight? Or is he going to tell me I'm too fat? Is he going to tell me I need to get off the couch or stop eating, the Cheetos? I promise this is not a preaching session. This is a session hopefully meeting you where you're at. And I've always had to do that in my private coaching with our clients. I have to do that with you guys as our students. I have to do that with myself. There's different times in your life where wellness feels different and looks different. Sometimes when you're youthful and young and you just felt awesome all the time, it didn't matter if you pound down like 7 tacos and 4 beers in one night. Okay, well, maybe it did, but you could get away with that the next 2 days because your classes didn't start till 11 a.m. Or, you know, you had times in your life where you could get away with bad energy. You had times in your life where the energy was more abundant because that age or that health state that you were in at that time. But you and I both know there's sometimes it ain't so good. You know, it's like you're trying everything and you feel like crap and you don't know why. You know, you're doing what they say. You got your yoga mat, you know, you're following this wellness person, you're doing your Headspace or your Calm or your tapping solution app. You're doing all the things, but you still feel like crap and you don't know why. That is the challenge of the wellness journey. I certainly know that. Many of you guys have been with me for a long time. I've been blessed to teach personal development now, essentially for 25 years, only full-time for the last, 17 years. And, full-time in the last 15 years. And in that journey, I've had to be on stage teaching to hundreds or thousands of people who paid a lot of money to be there. And I would feel like crap backstage. I was tired. I was fatigued. I didn't feel my body right. I was stressed from business. I was stressed from family and the finances and all the obligations that felt on my shoulders. There's been times just like you when you're in that roaring stage of your career where things are going great, but you don't feel great. There's also been times, many of you guys were with me in 2011 when I had my brain injury. And that took me on a whole new wellness journey because at that point I was a high performance guy. You know, I had really gotten my mind, my body, and my spirit, my work and family. I'd gotten kind of like in alignment, if you will. I was in the zone for a series of years. I was feeling good. And then on a trip with some friends, I wrecked an ATV, a 4-wheeler. And I rolled several times and I snapped my wrist off, broke my ribs, threw out my hip, my shoulder, and ended up with a traumatic brain injury. And that opened a whole new world of learning for me to understand my brain and to heal my physical body. I know many of you have been through those situations, and many of you right now, you're dealing with sickness in your life or your family. You're dealing with, an optimized, a non-optimized body, and you just feel awful. Or you recently got hurt or sick, and listen, recovering from that, that's real. And so we'll talk about some of those recovery routines. We'll talk about some of those new ways to think about your mind, your body, your brain, your spirit. Today's a good discussion. It's a really good discussion. We're going to start with the most simple thing I want you to write in your journal and fill out, which is this. Wellness to me is ... What does wellness mean to you? You know, whenever I teach a topic, I always encourage the audience, like, define it for yourself. Because if you don't define it for yourself, how are you ever going to align with it, achieve it, manifest it? You know, some people say, I want to be successful, Brendon. I'm like, what does that mean? They're like, I don't know. Money? It's like, what does it mean to be successful or confident? You have to define those things. What does happiness mean to you? We'll talk about that today. But wellness, what does it mean to you? I really want you to think about it. What does wellness mean to you? When you have full or holistic wellness, what does that look like? What does that feel like? Maybe what you can do in your journal right now is just wellness to me is, and then just write down some words that come up to you. Wellness to me is what? Just write down one word. Wellness to me is health, fitness, resilience, peace, purpose, happiness, aliveness. What is it for you? Just take a moment right now. I'm going to walk you through my personal definition of this and then share some ideas that maybe you can put into play in your home, in your work life. So wellness to me is, here are my keywords and my practices. Number 1, wellness to me is happiness. If I don't feel happy on a consistent basis, I know I'm not on my A game in terms of my wellness practices. To me, they go hand in hand. Wellness and happiness. They're not separate. They're not different. They are the same thing in many ways. If I'm not happy, I know my wellness practices are off. So let's talk about some of these ideas for happiness. Okay, for me, the first thing of my wellness practice and what makes me a happy dude. Like if you met me, you'd be like, God, that guy is annoyingly happy a lot. If you've been to my seminars before and you see me go for 4 days, 9 hours a day often on stage by myself, people are like, how does he have that much energy? It's because I have the ultimate secret to happiness. And we have the ultimate secret to happiness. I'm telling you, you feel well. So what is my ultimate secret to happiness? The first thing is having reverence for life. And then practices that make me feel that, So many of you know, 25 years ago, this month, 25 years ago, this month, I had the car accident that made me, as a young man, finally appreciate life and really want to live it and explore it and feel it and love it and connect with people. I was a broken down, super sad, unwell young man who was depressed and suicidal. And then the car accident knocked some sense in my head, and in my head, it made me realize I want to live this life. I don't want to take my life. From that day forward, for the last 25 years, I can tell you, I have felt happy every single day for 25 years. And my unfair advantage of that isn't because I have this perfect life and nothing bad ever happens, OMG, it's because I make myself feel happy every day by reminding myself of the blessing of this life. So those practices, what does that look like? Well, it's simple practices of in the morning, Wayne Dyer taught me, wake up, swing your legs over, put your feet on the ground, say thank you, thank you, thank you. Another day alive, another opportunity to change, another day to grow. Thank you for this opportunity to serve today. Let me live this day with intention and focus and joy. Oh, please allow me to feel the sense of aliveness. And I just start the morning with a sense of joy and luck and honor and privilege to be alive, to have the breath. I would say, if you have reverence for life, everything else feels and looks good. When you forget the gratitude of the extraordinary blessing and the incomprehensible unlikeliness of your survival in life right now, the odds of the universe of you being here, this little speck amongst the cosmos, is so profound that when you have deep reverence, which is respect, honor, appreciation, a sense of humility and thankfulness that you are alive, everything else flows from that. People are like, you're so vibrant. I'm like, have you ever seen my mom? If you ever met my mom, she is so happy to meet you. She is so happy to be alive. She's had perspective. She's been in a war. She grew up in war in Vietnam. She was the child of a soldier who was lost. So she was in a child recovery program. She was shipped to another country where she didn't know anyone and didn't want to live, separated from her family. She had to immigrate to the United States under dire conditions. She met her first husband, who was not good and was abusive. She went out and struck out on her own. She eventually met my father, who'd also been through huge difficulties in his life, growing up super poor and having just spent multiple years, 3 tours in Vietnam, and got all shot up over there. My parents were happy people. They didn't have a lot, but they were grateful for life because they saw people die. They were grateful for life, and that reverence was something that was just palpable in my household. And I know I was lucky for that. A lot of people didn't luck out on getting great parents. I had good examples to that. And that was good. But like I said, later on, I became depressed because sometimes, when you don't have good relationships, which we'll talk about in wellness, it's hard to be happy, even if you should. But I tell people all the time, if the umbrella of reverence for life is not there, if a deep gratitude, appreciation, and thankfulness for whatever you call it, for God, for life, for cosmos, for universe, for dang crazy genetic luck that you emerged and have life, if you don't have that, I promise your wellness journey will never feel vibrant. I promise you can eat all the energy, foods and supplements. You can, take care of yourself. I know a lot of people who are super fit and healthy and miserable because they don't appreciate their life. They don't keep perspective that this journey is going to end super quick for them and all of us. And so wellness and the real journey to wellness begins with reverence for life, deep gratitude, deep thankfulness, deep humility and honor for life. That's my ultimate secret. Like, how are you so happy? I'm like, I ain't dead. If you're alive, oh my gosh, and you can feel that, then you can tune into your breath and feel the sensations around your body. If you can sense and feel throughout the day, all of your senses, and take in the wonders of the world, even if it's like a concrete city, or you're out on, I happen to be on the beach, or I grew up in the mountains, or I can get outside and see some nature, or I can just remind myself of how big this earth is and how lucky I am to be one of the 7+ billion people. It's impossible to fathom your blessings. And I know when you say that to people in today's world, they're like, oh, sure, you can say that because you're privileged. You can say that because you're lucky. You can say that because you made your dreams, or you have money, or you are this, or you are that. And what they're doing is they're casting out to the world their perspective that says, you don't understand me. So all those things you have, it's unfair. And that's a real quick way to feel miserable, which leads me to my second point, happiness. What are my happiness practices? Well, when I told you, I wake up, I feel reverence to life. I pray, I meditate throughout the day, and those little simple check-ins of appreciation to God. It might be your gratitude journal. At the end of the night, you log into GrowthDay, you type in your journal, all the things you are grateful for. You must consistently, and every single day, you must capture the sense of joy, the moments that mattered, the little things and events that made you grateful or appreciative. If you don't capture them, you don't feel them. And what happens is your attention goes to everything else. So my first practice of wellness is reminding myself to be happy that I am alive. But the second one I was talking about, where it's easy for people to cast and go, oh, you're so lucky, or you're so privileged. And by the way, we all are. That's part of reverence for life. I'm like, when people are like, you're so lucky, I'm like, yeah, totally. Well, you don't understand. I've been through this. I'm like, I don't understand. I haven't been through that. Tell me about it. I really believe we can learn from one another. We can understand one another's pain. We can explore relationships and conversations of empathy and compassion. And that's a practice in recognizing where people are unhappy and where they are angry, and recognizing that that's okay too. And sometimes when we're most angry, we're out of our reverence for life. When we're most upset, we're out of our gratitude. When we hate on other people, we lost perspective of the uniqueness of this oneness journey we're all on, where we got to breathe this morning.
Hey, my friends, it's Brendon Burchard, founder and creator of GrowthDay. Welcome to an awesome session where we're going to talk about the leadership principles and practices that can help you have a greater impact in the world, in your family, with your teams, in your community, as you're somebody who wants to be a person of influence. You want to help people. You want to serve people. You want to do something significant with your life that really matters. You got to start working these practices and principles in leadership. Without leadership, we don't make our impact. So I'm pumped to be here today with you and this GrowthDay community, because that's what we are all about. Our mission is, how do we enable you to have a home for personal development? How do we make self-improvement a way of life for you so that you keep getting better and better and better at what you're doing, about who you are, so you can reach your full potential and so you can serve your highest purpose here? I always begin with principle number one, my biggest belief, my biggest teaching in all of leadership. And it's 5 simple words. People support what they create. People support what they create. This is the defining leadership principle of my life. Every time I'm working with a leader and they're frustrated with the coworker, they can't get the team to be motivated and energized. The down line isn't performing. The up line isn't listening. We got this problem where you can't mobilize a movement, and or you started a political action committee and it didn't stick, or you started your nonprofit and no one contributed. It always comes down to a fundamental misperception about this topic of leadership. Leadership's fundamental principle is that people support what they create. If you want people to follow you, they must create with you. They must feel enabled, trusted, empowered, autonomous, capable, rewarded for participating in the journey, in what we'll call the vision today, right? If they don't have any hand in shaping it, and if they have no reward, autonomy, or trust in participating in it, they got no skin in the game. They got no reason to be enthusiastic, excited, hardworking, excellent. So what happens? Well, as you see around the world, it's like we have these command and control old models from the past, these dictatorial ways of leading where it was like, do this, do this, do this, very early 1800s stuff that should have been done by the 1950s, but people are still learning. And so you have this situation where a lot of people still think of like, oh, I have positional leadership. I'm the boss, or I'm this leader. Everyone needs to only do these things. And it becomes a one-way street, or it becomes something where the leader doesn't have the connection with everybody else because no one has a part in it. They can't play yet. They don't believe in it yet. Even if they like you, even if they think you're an okay person, even if you had great successes in the past, if you don't get them collaborating to create where we're going, how we're going there, and how we'll be together, they're not interested. They'll pretend, they'll take the paycheck, but they'll be gone in 6 months. Or when the tough times hit, or the stock price goes down, they're bailing, man, because they're thinking, you know what? I'm not part of this. I'm not part of this. The new buzzword of the last decade was certainly culture in organizations, even in our homes, right? Create a culture of openness, of diversity, create a culture of enthusiasm, create a culture of accountability, culture. What does that mean? Culture is the outcome of the philosophy that people support what they create. That we're collectively shaping a culture. Well, we collectively shape the leadership journey too. And so if you don't feel like you have buy-in from people, which is the number one complaint of all leaders worldwide in my research at the High Performance Institute, the number one thing I ever found was that leaders are disappointed, discouraged, or demotivated because they don't get buy-in from their teams. Most of the time, they blame the teams. They blame the organizational structure. They blame the old leaders. They blame their spouse, their partner. They blame anybody they can. Why won't the school board listen to me? Why won't this person? They won't do this. I have this idea. No one comes along. It's because you have this idea and you didn't invite anyone to come along. You just told people what to do. You told people how to think. You told people how it's supposed to go. And I'm telling you, we live in a participative global culture now where people want a voice. And so much of leadership is understanding where to open conversations to allow diverse voices to come in, have a perspective on something, even if you or the leaders maintain that decision-making authority. The active participation and enrollment of conversation is the difference maker. And your job as a leader, listen to this, is to hold that space, to set the standard, the expectation, the structure for that space for other people to participate. Now, I know some of you, the leaders out there are like, yeah, but that's super hard, the timing of that and when, and some people have a voice, but they don't know what the hell they're talking about. They're not an expert, Brendon. Why would I listen to them? And oh my gosh, does this mean more meetings for me? Don't worry. This isn't about you doing more meetings just to listen casually. The principle I want you to write down: people support what they create. The 5 most important words in all of leadership: people support what they create. If you get that principle, we can change the world. When you don't get that principle, you don't get the followers. Now, with that, I want to introduce a concept, that I've literally been teaching for 21 years now. I don't like the word followers. I don't like the word leaders versus, or the positioning leaders versus followers. If you studied with me before, I really believe you have leaders, and instead of followers, you have collaborators. It's just a different way of defining things. Unfortunately, in our world, because of popularity and ego, when someone follows you on the internet, it all became about a one-way street. And so now we've ingrained in people's human behavior this idea that I broadcast my world and you should follow it. That's come into organizations. I tell you what to do and you should follow it. Versus, hey, we're co-creating this organization together. We're co-creating this team. We're co-creating this marriage. We're co-creating this family. Soon as you get that you're co-creating your family together, you're a different styled parent. Most troubles in parenting relationships and familiar relationships come from an old model that it's the parent versus the kids, and you do what I say, or you're not loved, you're dead to me. That really didn't work so good. We've learned that to have healthy and adaptive children, they need to feel part of the family process. They need to feel connected, cared for, and collaborative, literally, in how their day goes, how their life goes. They need to have a voice in it. Or later in their life, they're more passive towards chasing what's important to them. They never develop that autonomy early enough. So now, unfortunately, they do. They follow whatever's happening at school. They follow whatever's happening with that peer set, and they follow it often right into places you didn't want them to go. And so by controlling them too much, it removes their autonomy. By removing their autonomy, now they'll follow often the wrong people at the wrong time, stay in the wrong relationships because they didn't develop personal autonomy. Why? Because someone in their life too late failed to realize that this person had to be participating in shaping their life, their days, their weeks, their dreams, their destiny earlier. And I think that's so important in this world today, where you get a lot of blind followership to ideology or darker kind of like the darker side of humanity, where people don't question or they don't think because they haven't been participating in shaping their life. And we have to be aware of that as leaders. It's like, oh, you're going to have some people on your team who are super participative, and other people, they were never given autonomy or trust or a voice, and they're super smart, but you're not getting enough from them. They just need to be enrolled to participate in a different way than the person who's always had the benefit of being in communities where they were heard. We live in a world right now where so many people have never actually been heard. Then we expect them to perform as high performers in their organizational settings. It's like, oh, you have to be aware of these things. Some members of your team and some members of your family haven't been heard, haven't felt heard, haven't been allowed space for it. And I don't just mean listen to, I mean being allowed space to make decisions together about what's important. And that's just so critical. People support what they create. So you got to be thinking, I would love for you to evaluate yourself as a leader. Go, okay, on a scale, this is the workshop part. This is personal development, right? We're going to do the work. If you wrote down people support what they create, I'm curious, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1, yeah, you don't get that. 1's a bad number, okay? 1's the worst. I won't give you a 0. We'll give you a 1. And then there's 10. I'm going to ask you 2 questions to score yourself here. 1 to 10. First score. How conscious have you been about this principle? Like when I say people who support their create, you're like, oh yeah, I get that. I've been doing that. I'm aware of that. That's important to me. 1, has not been on my radar. 10, that's been on my radar. Did you know the higher you score on that, the higher life satisfaction you have, the higher connection you have with your employees, the longer your employees tend to stay employees? I know you're not all organizational leaders, but it basically means that the better you've been conscious about this and practicing it, the happier your culture, your team, and others are. They want to be on that journey. So put that front of dashboard. I call it front of radar. Like that's on your radar. That's on your dashboard. Have I been leading in this style, or at least aware of this? People support what they create. Okay, got it. The second way I'd love you to score that is to take a look at the most critical members of your team. Maybe this is your executive team, or the most important people in your life, your family, and look at each of them individually through this lens. It's like, oh, has this person been co-creating the experience with me? Have they been active in that or passive in that? And not as a judgment to them, like a 1, they're bad. It's that, oh, if they are a 1, I, as a leader, need to create a process, a rhythm, a meeting, an opportunity for this person to get some decision-making authority, to establish some trust, to, if anything, to be heard more in meetings. Maybe this person is never called on. They never get the opportunity. And you're gonna like, oh, I'm gonna be aware this person has not been participating. And I need that participation from them if we're gonna have long-term success, and we need to participate together. So let me have that. So I'm always thinking about that. And when I work with leaders and I coach them in high performance, it's always about, okay, let's work through your team. Let's walk through this principle, and let's talk about each of these critical team members. And do they feel empowered to be part of the process? Because people support what they create is ultimately people being part of the process. Because guess what? When they're part of the process, they've helped come up with the decisions. They're working towards something they had a hand in. They fight for it. They stay focused on it. They have ego and decision-making in that process, and they want to protect it. When someone has an idea, you know what they want to do? They want to own that. They want to protect that. They want to perpetuate that. They want to ensure that that idea lives. And they'll do that sometimes sanely and unsanely. You could look at across humanity, the worst of the human conditions and human actions in the world came from people who had an idea and they believed it and they shaped it and they fought for it till death when it was destructive towards others. And the most beautiful parts, the better angels of our nature, came from those times in which we had an idea, we were participative in that idea, continuing shaping it, evolving it, making it even better. And as we made that even better, oh, okay, we made it together better together. We'll fight for it, we'll participate in it, but we'll do it for positive ends. It's a difference maker, isn't it? If you look around the world, even today, like at higher, political levels, as an example, like I happen to be doing this today on July 1st, so we're not too far away from an upcoming Independence Day in the United States. And that idea of democracy, of a participative democracy, that's a different way of thinking, and it changed the shape of history. And you saw people we're still refining what our republic is and how it works together. We're still trying to figure out our systems and our rules. We're still working on an active democracy. And that's an incredible thing, an incredible blessing. And it's one reason why the country, at least globally, as I'm filming this, leads the world, right? People support what they create. Now, I don't want to get political with you, where people are like, oh, I don't agree with this, or those Americans, or whatever. I'm just here to say there is definable, demonstratable, and great examples across organizations, across political systems, across socioeconomic systems, that when people are allowed to participate, better ideas come up, people have more buy-in, people stay committed over the long term, humans become more resilient themselves. It's important. It's so important. So please take an active role in this day. Score yourself, be honest, and think about this and how you can amplify this. If all you did is understand this principle and you practice this principle at the deepest levels, you would so far surpass almost everybody you're working with, I promise. This can be your day for personal growth. This can be that day you committed to and you remember and you go, that was the day I got myself a community. I got better coaches. I committed to making my life the absolute best that I could. This is that day. Make today your growth day. Click the button on this page and sign up right now.